Yuba-Sutter.Live's local government live streams are presented by Plumas Lake Self-Storage in Plumas Lake, where lifelong local residents are helping other residents keep things safe, providing indoor storage units, outdoor RV and vehicle parking, moving supplies, and Penske truck rentals. Details at plumaslakeselfstorage.com.
Ted Langdell, Bob Harlan here. He is my guest on the new show that we have coming up here on Wednesday. We've got a lot of stuff going on, and that is Yuba-Sutter.Live's new show called Lunch with Langdell. So we're going to be down here at the Yuba-Sutter United Way on 4th Street in Marysville, talking to Bob about a variety of things. We'll get the inside scoop. That's this coming Wednesday, right here on Yuba-Sutter.Live. And So Bob's going to tell us a bit more about some of the neat things that the Yuba-Sutter-Colusa United Way has been up to. In fact, I think I heard $400,000.
Yeah, just about.
Don't tell anybody what it is that you did
yet. It's
yet.
something we do on a regular basis.
Okay, so this is cool, and we're going to be right down here. So please join us on Wednesday, but then also make sure that you are with us all day Tuesday, or different parts of Tuesday, because we've got a whole bunch of stuff coming up, and that includes these fine programs. So that is all coming up this week, not next week. That's this week right here on your, well, I don't know, what would we call this? It's Yuba-Sutter's version of C-SPAN, basically. And that is Yuba-Sutter.Live, right here on Facebook, YouTube, and Yuba-Sutter.Live. I'm Ted Langdell.
By the California Department of Public Health. Members of the public will be allowed to address the board during the board's consideration of each agenda item. If you wish to speak on any item appearing on the agenda, please fill out a speaker card noting the number of the agenda item about which you wish to speak and present it to the board clerk. If you wish to speak about more than one agenda item, please fill out the separate card for each item. If you wish to speak under public comment, please note that on the speaker card. When the matter is announced, please approach the speaker's lectern after being recognized by the chair. Can we get a roll call, please?
Supervisor McKelly?
Here.
Supervisor Flores?
Here.
Supervisor Ziegemeier?
Here.
Supervisor Baines?
Present.
Supervisor Conant?
Present.
All right. First up, we're going to welcome up Jason Sidley.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I had to get a drink of water first. Chair Ziegemeier, board members, my name is Jason Sidley with the Division of Multi-Benefit Initiatives for the Department of Water Resources. Today I'm here to give you a briefing on the progress of the 2022 CVFPP update. I have a few folks here with me or virtually with me to help along with the presentation and listen in. In the room, I have President Jane Dolan, President of the Central Valley Flood Protection Board. On the line, I have Steve Rothert, who is the Division Manager for the Division of Multi-Benefit Initiatives. I also have my colleague Ruth Darling from the Central Valley Flood Protection Board. And then Laura Kaplan with Kearns and West, who's going to be running our slides for us today and just providing overall support for us on the presentation. Thank you very much for taking the time today to allow us to provide this briefing to you. We previously briefed Supervisor Ziegemeyer and Conant. Nice to finally meet you face to face and not on a screen, but thank you. And at that time, this was in October, and at that time it was brought forth that they wanted us to come back and brief the full board closer to our public draft release, which will be coming out here in the next month or so. We do have a short PowerPoint presentation and would like to leave time for questions or remarks at the end. First, I'd like to pass it over to Steve Rothert for some introductory remarks. He's virtual.
Good afternoon, board, and thank you for the opportunity to share this briefing with you this afternoon. This is a really important effort that we have underway here, and Jason and his team have been working closely with Ruth and other colleagues from the Flood Board in developing this draft, public draft of the flood plan, and we're really here to listen to your questions and concerns and interests and make sure that we can do whatever we can to ensure that your interests are reflected in the flood plan, because we know how important flood management is to your county and your businesses and communities and residents. So thanks for the opportunity. Look forward to engaging today, and once the public draft comes out, engaging further with you on any comments and questions and concerns you might have. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I'll hand it over to Ruth Darling with the Central Valley Flood Protection Board.
Great, thank you. Hello, Sutter County Board. My name is Ruth Darling. I'm with the Central Valley Flood Protection Board, and some of you may know this, but according to Senate Bill 5, the Central Valley Flood Protection Act of 2008 states that the Department of Water Resources will prepare the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan, and the Flood Board shall adopt the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan. So I'd like to echo what Steve said, and we're here today to listen. And I also wanted to let you know, and this will be reflected later in the PowerPoint, but once the flood plan is released, after maybe a month or so for folks able to review the flood plan, the board will hold a public hearing meetings, at least 3. So we'll have opportunity for folks to come to board sponsored public hearings to receive comments on the flood plan as well. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to Board President Jane Dolan if she has any introductory remarks.
Excuse me, would you mind coming up to the lectern, please? Thank you. Sorry, just so everyone knows, thank you so much.
But I understand. So good afternoon, supervisors. I'm Jane Dolan, and recently designated by the governor to be president of the board. So I'm your flood board connector. I'm your neighbor. I live in the county to the north. And I know how hard you all work and how important local government is. So the board has worked pretty hard through the development of the second update of the plan to reach out and get local input. Certainly we've worked through these last 5 years with the regional flood management planning and we call them the FCAs. I was on the board when we formed the Sutter Butte Flood Control Association. Congratulate you on all the work that you've carried out to do that. We are kind of not happy. We are sharing and loving this beautiful weather because we really would like it to rain a bit, not too much, but some. But we do need to plan for flood, as you know. So we'll give you information on this plan, and we want your input and your ideas, and we will continue to work with you. Thank you for the time today.
Thank you very much, President Dolan. If you can go to the next slide, please, Laura. So this slide is just an acknowledgement slide we put together to look at or discuss all the hard work that has gone on between the department, the state, and the local entities, the counties, the FCAs, as Ms. Dolan talked about. And just to kind of highlight some of the great things that we've done. We also wanted to thank all 3 of the Sacramento River Basin RFMPs who have been participating in the 2022 update process. They provide a lot of vital input to help us develop the needs information as well as a lot of the priorities and recommendations that you'll see in the plan. We did particularly want to call out the Sutter Butte Flood Control Agency's Executive Director, Mike Bissett, for helping us to get up to speed on flood management issues and projects here in Sutter County. Finally, we want to give a thanks to Board Clerk Donna Johnston and Assistant Board Clerk Gina Graham for helping us with the arrangements here today to allow us to be able to present in person while also virtually. So thank you very much for that. Next slide, please. So the CVFPP builds upon significant scientific and collaborative work from the last 15 years. This current version aligns with the California Water Resiliency Portfolio Initiative and includes a commitment to protect and enhance human and natural systems. The conservation strategy, which is a major component of the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan effort, supports all of the CVFPP goals, but focuses specifically on promoting ecosystem functions and initiatives. The CVFPP overall is a descriptive document, not intended to be a funding or permitting plan for specific or decision for specific projects. It prioritizes states' investments in flood management over the next 3 decades. It promotes multi-benefit projects while also looking for ways to integrate and improve ecosystem functions associated with flood risk reduction projects. Next slide, please. The regional flood management planning groups are DWR's primary vehicle for local regional collaboration on flood management planning that rolls up into and it helps inform the CVFPP. Sutter County is represented by all 3 of the Sacramento River Basin RFMPs, as I highlighted earlier. Those are the Sacramento Delta, or Sacramento North, Lower Sacramento Delta North, the Mid and Upper Sacramento River, and the Feather River regions. For this go-around of the regional flood management planning effort, the regions were asked to help us develop the 2022 update, and part of the way they were invited to help us was further developing the state system-wide investment approach portfolio information. In doing that, they provided all the needs as their understanding of the system for this current time frame. Additionally, they put together a regional priorities white paper, which has helped us to define not only the recommendations in the document, but some of the priorities that you'll see in the document. Next slide, please. So, being that this is the second update of the CVFPP, the 2022 update, we are currently updating the body of work that was created and developed in 2017 with new information and tools. The end result of this update will be an updated investment needs development and recommendations to continue implementing the state system-wide investment approach over the next 30 years. The broad messages and concepts that were part of the original 2012 state system-wide investment approach from that original plan have not changed. But in the context of this iterative planning process, refinements to that vision are being made as we continue to understand our flood management systems, as well as the complex variables that we deal with as flood managers on a daily basis. Next slide, please. This slide gives you an idea of what you'll see in the draft when it comes out. If you had a chance to review the working draft of the plan, it included a majority of this work, the chapters 1 through 4, which is a very similar layout to what we had in the 2017 plan. Chapter 1 sets that context of what we're looking to do, what some of those themes are with looking around climate resilience, looking at tracking the performance of our implementation efforts and our alignment efforts. And then Chapter 2 is going to take a look at that, looking back. What are the things that have been done in the last 5 years, and what's the progress that's been made from an implementation standpoint, from a policy development standpoint? Chapter 3 looks forward. What are the things that still need to be done? What are we planning to do? Kind of that strategic big picture look of what's still needed in the system from a policy and implementation standpoint. And then Chapter 3, we call it, it's kind of more of the implementation, or Chapter 4, excuse me, is that implementation chapter. How are we going to do it? How are we looking to fund this over the next 30 years? In addition, for the public draft, some new things you'll see is we have the forwards, which are essentially letters, one coming from the DWR director and one from Board President Dolan, that will kind of set the stage for what you're going to see in the update. Additionally, what you'll see is at least the framework for a call to action, which would be that 2-page kind of punchy upfront. These are the things that need to be done immediately. You won't necessarily see the full content development there. That's something will be the board and DWR will be helping to develop as we go through the public process. In the middle of the draft, you'll notice 6 regional spotlights. Each region was asked to provide us a regional spotlight which highlights the opportunities, challenges, and priorities for that region. Kind of gives them another space to get their priorities into the document. And they worked hard with DWR to help create these pieces. And then finally, the kind of typical appendices that you'll see in this document. First one being a CVFPP background. And so we took a lot of the information that you may have seen previously, kind of that background information in the 2017 and then 2012 plan, and moved it into an appendix. So it kind of has this evergreen space to allow the history of the state system-wide investment approach, the history of SB5 and the document development to have its own place, and allow Chapter 1 to dive right into the update itself. The second one is a legislative reference and reader's guide, which is just kind of that tone setting. What are the things that needed to be done from a legislative standpoint and why and how they'll be reflected in the plan. And then the third one is what we're calling CVFPP recommendations. In Chapter 3 of the plan itself, you'll see some very high priority recommendations that we've called out across several different issue categories. The appendix adds a little bit more detail to those recommendations and also adds some other additional recommendations that need to be implemented along those issue categories. Next slide, please. Take a quick run through each of the chapters of the document, provide some brief highlights. So Chapter 1 is that it focuses on the 3 themes of the document: the adapting to climate resilience, tracking the performance of our implementation, and integration alignment with other planning and implementation efforts to promote more effective implementation. Some of the highlights are that CVFPP updates are consistent with previous plans. We're not creating a new plan here. It is building on the work that's already been done. Building on the outcome-based performance tracking effort from 2017 update, the 2022 update will continue progressing toward tracking the performance of planned investments toward an aligned set of intended outcomes, including other benefits that can be achieved by developing multi-benefit projects. We've also updated the SSIA portfolio to provide a portfolio that's reasonable, balanced, and cost-effective, using information not only from DWR implementation programs, but also from the regional fund management planning groups. And then finally, you'll see the kind of thread throughout that in spite of all the investments that have been made to date, and a lot of money has been spent, a lot of good projects have been done, a lot of the flood risk remains high, and native species continue to decline in a lot of the areas. Some of this being accelerated by projected growth increases and climate change effects. And these effects will continue to exacerbate unless effective action is taken. Next slide, please. So Chapter 2, excuse me, is that implementation progress chapter. It's basically taking a look back at the last 5 years since the 2017 update and highlighting what's been done, not only from a structural and non-structural implementation kind of progress situation. And if you're familiar with previous plans, excuse me, the implementation discussion is broken into 4 components: the system-wide, urban, rural, and small communities. And we have highlights for each of the implementation actions within those 4 buckets, I guess. Policy issue development. So in 2017, we developed a set of policy issues and recommendations on how to improve those situations. This will provide, Chapter 2 will provide you an update as to the progress on some of those efforts. Performance tracking work. What work has been done on setting of outcomes, metrics, indicators. In addition, it tracks the conservation strategy measurable objectives work that has been ongoing with the conservation strategy work. It also refines our understanding of the effects of climate change on the flood management system. And then it'll have several spotlights on different projects and partnerships, including progress spotlight on the Yolo Bypass Cash Loop partnership. Next slide, please. Chapter 3, it takes a look forward. You know, what are the technical analyses results that have come forward, including the life loss, the damages, and the climate change efforts. Some updated portfolio information, as I highlighted earlier. We received a lot of information from the RFMPs and as well as the DWR implementation programs to help craft a portfolio. So a lot of the highlights on that will be highlighted in Chapter 3. There's spotlights on regional efforts, taking more of a forward look at the yellow bypass cash flow and what needs to happen over the next 5-10 years. Continued development of outcomes, indicators, and metrics for tracking and performance, including looking at ways that we can help address equity issues in flood management. And then policy recommendations. I highlighted there's a list of high priority policy recommendations in Chapter 3. This is where you'll find that piece. Next slide, please. So, this slide just highlights the policy issues. And so to the left of the plus sign are the 8 policy issues that were developed in 2017 and defined as impediments to implementation. The 2017 effort developed a series of recommendations to help move those policy issues forward. And so those where needed are continuing to build into the 2022 plan. In addition, we've defined 2 other policy issues that are in need of addressing, and that is equity and then the effects of climate change and how to address those. Next slide, please. Excuse me. So Chapter 4, as I mentioned, is that implementation chapter. What you'll see in there is there's updated need information, taking those portfolios and the costs associated with them and developing a portfolio need of information. We've also analyzed historical expenditures, what's been spent over the recent past from a state and federal and local standpoint on flood management. And then based on these 2 pieces of information, we developed a funding plan that is intended to account for our current understanding of the full SSIA portfolio, at least our current understanding of it. Next slide, please. And so where we are with it right now, it is currently being in its final review with our DWR and board executives for those final pieces, and then we're going to be making any adjustments based on those reviews and preparing the document to be released in early April. The document will release in a couple ways. We will release it on a website, so it's going through a process of being made ADA accessible for folks to be able to access the document on the website. In addition, we will send out links to our various interested parties, similar list to what was developed or what was used for the working draft. In addition, folks that we've been engaging through our executive officials engagement will also receive copies. We will do a limited run of hard copies, so if there are any folks that are interested in actually feeling the paper in their hands, please let us know. You can either let me know here or let through staff, and we can get you a copy mailed out. And then the last slide I had before I hand it over to Ruth is just shows kind of, if you go to the next slide, please. This is the slide that kind of just shows the timeline of where we are. The public draft being brought out here at the end of Q1, kind of the early April timeframe. We also have been producing a couple of other pieces of components of it. The flood system status report and the state plan of flood control descriptive documents. Those have just been released in the public draft form. And the conservation strategy was released in December. And those pieces, the adopted, where DWR prepares and the board adopts, will all be coming out in that fall time frame. Now I wanted to hand it over to Ruth Darling to talk us through the public meeting and public process.
Thank you, Jason. This is Ruth Darling with the Central Valley Flood Protection Board. And so this last row here highlights the Central Valley Flood Protection Board's role in adoption of the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan. So once the plan is released in early April, there will be a extensive comment period. And during that comment period, after, as I stated before, giving folks time to review the document, likely 3 to 4 weeks, the board will hold public hearings. And as stated on the next slide, which I will get to shortly, I'll dive into a little bit more detail on those public hearings. But in addition, the board also hosts public workshops. And as we've done in 2012 and 2017, once we've coordinated with the Department of Water Resources on the comments received on the plan, the board will host public workshops to essentially workshop those comments and make any necessary revisions to the public draft. Next slide, please. So we will hold one in-person hearing. That's as required by the statute. It needs to be held in the Sacramento Basin, and we will hold one in-person hearing in the San Joaquin Basin. The venues for those have not been determined yet, but they will be notified when we send out the public draft via email. They will also be on the Flood Board's website. We will also hold one virtual public hearing.
Excuse me.
We are not certain yet that we have the capabilities as Sutter County does today to hold a hybrid meeting. We're trying to figure that out now. So trying to determine if those in-person meetings can also be virtual hybrid meetings. So, but all of those details will be presented on our website, as well as the email that goes out with the draft plan.
Thank you very much. Sorry,
excuse,
I don't mean to cut you off. Sorry, this is Chairman Ziegenmeyer. We have very minimal time left, and I want to leave questions up, a little time for my colleagues to ask some questions. So, if you could kind of give us a short version, real fast, wrap it up.
Oh, that's fine. These last two comments you can read them, and I can be done. Thank you.
Thank you.
That wraps up the presentation. So
All right. Well, I'm sure we have a few comments. I know I have some myself. We'll start over here if we.
Oh, okay. So through the chair. So my question is, for Sutter County, over 70% of the land mass in the county is in the floodplain, and you know, this is not only difficult for residential development, impossible for that, but even agricultural infrastructure is very difficult to build in the floodplain. With 70% of the land mass in the county in the floodplain, what kinds of things can we do as a county to try to alleviate, make these problems less severe?
Well, I mean, I don't know if, Michael, if you had any thoughts on that or not. I know I'm not trying to roll you out there, but working with your regional flood management planning groups, as far from a planning perspective, that's probably going to be one of your best efforts to figure out how we can address these things through that process, and getting those needs reflected in the plan through the RFMPs is probably one of your best groups. If otherwise, working with some of the other department programs for grants and that sort of thing might be helpful. But I mean, I don't know within the plan how that would be reflected. Any more, I should say.
All right. Supervisor Baines, do you have any questions?
So it goes back to flood protection, and with the recent redistricting that I just, my district goes out to the levee to the west of Sutter County, and my district, there's someone reached out to me yesterday and today, both constituents wanting to build a home after reaching out to the development department, that one needs to raise his house 8 feet to be built, and the other, I think, 9 or 10 feet. So we have a huge concern with flood protection here. Thanks for your update. That I would like to have more time for question and answer. We were provided this just for future reference, so we were able to go through it before today's meeting. But my biggest concern is, how do we fix that levee to so we can remap Sutter County and give folks option. I mean, our property values are going down. We don't have opportunity. We cannot build residences. We cannot build. There's no agricultural infrastructure that we put up. We don't have enough infrastructure for walnuts, almonds, and now pistachios are coming into our community, and there's no facilities, and we can't build here.
Yeah. Obviously, that concern is felt by the planning team and understood. I mean, we've had conversations with not only the regions but other folks in the area, and that's definitely a concern. How that is addressed, I mean, that starts getting into land use challenges and issues, which is something the state typically doesn't try to wade into. As far as the strengthening or hardening of levees, that's something that will need to be looked at and worked out through the planning process and with the locals themselves. So. Not something that necessarily is going to be addressed in the 2022 plan, but we can continue to look at that moving forward.
Now, I get a few questions. What about water release? because that's what's on our mind here in this county mainly, is the fact that you see the releasing all the water going down the river, out in the ocean. And I'm curious which on these policies are where the Oroville Dam disaster falls in here. I mean, we lost a lot of land mass here in Sutter County and Yuba County from that Oroville Dam disaster. And you look at all the crops that aren't going to be there this year. You cannot flood rice for 1 year and get away with it. You can't water trees for a year and get away with it. And there's a lot of nice 4 or 5 year old trees out there that are going to be toast after this year. And that's what we're nervous about. And that's what I'd like to see answered, is the release from Oroville Dam and so forth, and all that water. You see it constantly. Every day you see posts and posts saying, why are you releasing so much water? Because we talk about flood protection, but we should also be talking about flood management or water management as well in the same sentence. So please bring those up in your conversations. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the comment.
All right, is that it, or? All right, well, thank you very much, and we appreciate you coming out today.
Ted Langdell, Bob Harlan here. He is my guest on the new show that we have coming up here on Wednesday. We've got a lot of stuff going on, and that is Yuba-Sutter.Live's new show called Lunch with Langdell. So we're going to be down here at the Yuba-Sutter United Way on 4th Street in Marysville, talking to Bob about a variety of things. We'll get the inside scoop. That's this coming Wednesday, right here on Yuba-Sutter.Live. And so Bob's going to tell us a bit more about some of the neat things that the Yuba-Sutter-Colusa United Way has been up to. In fact, I think I heard $400,000.
Yeah, just about.
Don't tell anybody what it is that you did
it's
yet.
something we do on a regular basis.
Okay, so this is cool, and we're going to be right down here. So please join us on Wednesday, but then also make sure that you are with us all day Tuesday, or different parts of Tuesday, because we've got a whole bunch of stuff coming up, and that includes these fine programs. So that is all coming up this week, not next week. That's this week right here on your, well, I don't know, what would we call this? It's Yuba-Sutter's version of C-SPAN, basically. And that is Yuba-Sutter.Live, right here on Facebook, YouTube, and Yuba-Sutter.Live.